Welcome to TheoTrade. This is Don Kaufman. Here we are, April 25th, 2018. You are watching the Theo Night video, just moments away from the Facebook earnings announcement. S&Ps today finished the day approximately 7 handles higher. Really just kind of some chopped out trade and consolidation, if you will, after we saw a little bit of, wild sell-side activity and rather unexpected activity in the previous day's trade. Let me take you a little bit, before we look at some individual positions, let me take you a little bit into some of the trade inside of the broader market, where some areas of concern are, and really where some areas and opportunity happens to effectively be. So first, we start inside of the S&P futures, and I'm going to take the S&P futures and I'm going to move them to a 30-day, again, a 30-day 1 hour. Go ahead and close up this kind of left side bar. And I've been elaborating upon these specific lines, which I now call gravity points, these particular lines on the screen, as we're just pinging back and forth between levels. Now, again, if you're unaware of the levels, up top over here, we have 2682, right dead in the center here, we have 26, and down below, 2575. Now, I have fully kind of vetted and discussed trading back down to the 25.75 in recent videos, and that I have full expectations that we will trade back down to 25.75. In fact, initially the anticipation was that would happen either late next week or earlier this week. Well, here we are halfway through the week, and we're still up in and around, again, the 26.26. However, we rallied just a bit towards the end of the trading session. But again, these kind of gravity points, as we call them, is precisely where the trade has been surrounding, and that's a little bit of consolidation after some of yesterday's kind of sell side activity. But as I keep discussing, we're just pinging from point to point, which is this 26.82 down to the 26.26. Okay, this initially looks like a bounce up. I think this bounce is going to be faded, probably going to head back down on the S&Ps, because I got to tell you, from where I stand, you're looking at markets in the last couple of days of trade, not a whole lot of buyers out there in these markets. Now, let me show you an aspect in an area I think that is going to be opportunistic in the days to come. Now, all earnings aside, I think earnings is only going to cloud, okay, some of the judgment, some of the situation. Listen, Facebook, which is in the midst of releasing earnings, well, right now, let's go over to it. Facebook, everybody's going to get caught up, obviously, in the Facebook trade, but the impact right now, all right, is fairly negligible to the S&P futures. Okay, well, I mean, again, Facebook, the earnings have dropped, meaning that they've ultimately come out, but we're still far from the conference call. This thing could be all over the place. You can see, again, Facebook now taking off to the upside. This is going to be, again, a short-term, I believe, a short-term impact to the Nasdaq and the broader S&Ps. Specifically, Facebook today closed right and around, okay, the 160 range. It's up less than about $4 right now. However, there's still an $8 expected move. So the initial kind of knee-jerk reaction right now happens to be trading to the upside. Nevertheless, hey, listen, we saw the exact same thing happen inside of Google the other day, where Google, and I discussed the earnings in Google, prior to Google's earnings ultimately coming out. But the earnings in Google, if you had those earnings in your hand the day before, you would have thought, I'm going to put everything into this and just buy Google. And Google completely and utterly reversed in trade. And then, again, of course, yesterday really was at the forefront of some of the sell-side activities, specifically inside of the Nasdaq, and caused the S&Ps to crater down to the 26.26 that we started off the morning at. Now, with that, where do I see some opportunities? Where do I see some risk? First, let's talk about the risk. Inside of the XLF, the financials. The financials in the coming days is where much of my focus will be. Okay, not so much tech. And again, I fully recognize, the Amazon and the Facebook, okay, and there's earnings coming out. But again, do not let that earnings draw your attention away from the bigger picture. One of the things that really is, I think, fairly striking inside of the financials right now is the range that we're starting to see on a day-to-day basis. Like, these are just some heavy volatility kind of days inside of the financials. And specifically, when you open up the options chain in the financials, just look at the 2-day options and recognize you got about a 25% implied volatility on almost a 50-cent expected move. It's 50 cents, yeah, but it's on a $27 underlying. This is big boy movement that it's implying that is ultimately going to move the S&Ps. Now, the reason I'm bringing up the financials, I believe that the risk in the short duration is to the downside. Again, this is just a short duration take, but I believe the risk in the financials happens to be, okay, to the downside. Why? Why am I actually looking for risk to be the downside inside of the financials? Well, that leads us over to the bonds, okay? And the bonds are seeing some fairly substantial and almost wild sell-side activity in the recent 2 weeks. So we're getting this wild sell-side activity. Now, everybody recognizes this as bonds sell off. What does it do to interest rates? Okay, well, something I've talked about extensively. Interest rates go up, and we've hit the so important threshold of now 3%. But the interest rates are skyrocketing, okay, in just the last couple of trading sessions, but that hasn't done anything per se to be helping the financials. And you got to recognize, right, that right now, okay, the financials, and I keep mentioning this, they have like the wind at their back. Everything is going the direction. Interest rates are picking up, but interest rates going up should help the financials. Do you see help in here? Okay, absolutely not. You see a marketplace that's struggling at this point in time, right? So in the near duration, I'm looking for, again, short duration move, okay, down inside of the financials. At the exact same time, I'm actually anticipating a rally back to the upside in bonds. Nothing wild, nothing substantial. It's more or less, okay, a condition that, I mean, people, we haven't even had a bounce day in here. Now, there could be some more sell-side activity in the bonds, but look for a vicious, rip your kind of face-off rally back. And that rally back in the bonds, and let me kind of zoom out here for just a moment, the rally back in the bonds could take us as high again as this like 143 half, 143, you know, and maybe even close to the 144. I think that kind of bounce is well kind of in scope for the bonds. Now, how do you actually go about trading this? This is something I discussed extensively today here in the TheoTrade chat room. I'm actually using a bullish in-out spread. Again, a bullish in-out spread, specifically in the TLT, happens to be a little bit more of a retail-friendly product. But one thing I do want to caution you, if you look at the bonds or you look at the TLT, I'm looking for a bounce. This is not a long duration position. And in looking for a bounce, people, you need to stay defined. That is defined risk. Why? You got a marketplace that's under serious pressure. And eventually you can get a marketplace under serious pressure where the bottom literally falls out. The bottom's going to fall out. I want my risk to be minimal. But at the same time, we are very overdue for just the bounce back to the upside. And again, trying to pull a small degree of profitability out of a situation where this is a very extended product. Again, look for bonds to possibly bounce in a couple of days, and that in turn to bring the financials lower. With that, the financials head lower, it's likely to also grab and grip hold of the S&Ps and pull them back down. As I've been mentioning kind of day in and day out, I am almost shocked at this point that we have not come back in and retested this 25.75 in the S&Ps. But people, look for some more volatility as this week progresses. Thanks everybody for joining us here at TheoTrade. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.